Hey guys, here's a podcast from UVM Extension I did with Andy Chamberlin with his Ag Engineering podcast. We talked all about the MaterMacc Planter and why it's so awesome. So check it out. I hope you guys like it.
This is the Ag Engineering Podcast that rolls right into the details on tools, tips, and techniques that improve you, your farm, and our world. I'm your host, Andy Chamberlin from the University of Vermont Extension, and this podcast is sponsored by Northeast SARE. Thanks for listening. Harrison, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So if you could describe your farm in one sentence, what would you say?
I'd say we're a mid-sized, diversified vegetable farm growing year-round in the Pioneer Valley.
Well, welcome.
Thank you.
I was looking at your YouTube channel and I noticed you did some videos on the MaterMacc Planter, and I saw that planter in person down in Pennsylvania and thought it was pretty sweet. Did a couple videos on it myself, and then it looked like you're a big fan of it, but I really haven't seen it or heard of people with one or talked to anybody with one since I saw it on the showroom floor, essentially. So I thought it'd be great to get some input from you on what you liked about it. To start off, where's your location? What's your town and state?
So we're Bardwell Farm, and we're located in Hatfield, Massachusetts, right here in the Pioneer Valley, right next to the Connecticut River.
How many years have you been farming?
I've been farming for about 7 years now. The farm's been in our family since 1685. So I'm actually a ninth generation Bardwell farmer in this town, which is pretty amazing. I like to use that. I'm the new generation. The business kind of, I don't want to say retired, but it slowed down in my grandparents' era.
Yeah.
My father never fully got into it, but kind of always worked part-time. So about 7 years ago, I established it again as my business, so a new business pretty much under the name. And I've been growing it slowly since then. So I established it back in 2016 was the first year I had it as my own. So this year we're going to be 30 acres of diversified vegetables. We've got about 50 different varieties that we're growing throughout the season between winter high tunnel production and main season field productions.
What are your primary markets?
So I started as a retail farm stand, self-serve farm stand when I first started. So that's been kind of the staple of my business for the past 7-8 years now. We slowly jumped into a CSA. We started 3 years ago. This will be our 4th season, I believe. Last year we just jumped into farmers markets. So we did 3 farmers markets last year.
Oh, wow.
And we've been slowly gaining traction and actually quite expanding on our wholesale as well. So we kind of do a little bit of everything right now, and we're kind of honing on what works best for us with the changing channels of sales and people's activity and interest. So COVID really helped push retail. Last year wholesale took off quite a bit too. So
Yeah, the last couple years really threw a wrench into the market channels for sure.
yeah, so being newer to a lot of in the past 3 or 4 years is really when my business has kind of gone the path that it's been. We've kind of been doing a lot of new things, so we're trying to figure out what's best for the business. So,
How many employees do you have?
during the main season, we probably have at max 10, and that'll split between retail and field staff. So, my production crew is somewhere around 5 to 6 people on the busier part of the season, and the retail's probably about the same, a little less this year.
Well, today we wanted to talk about the MaterMacc Planter. I saw you do a video on this, and I've also done a video and seen it, so I wanted to learn a little bit more about this planter. So just jump right in. Tell me a little bit about it. What is this MaterMacc planter you've got?
So this is a 2-row precision vacuum MaterMacc planter, actually custom built for myself with no-till attachments and features on it. So that's kind of makes it unique to other ones out there. Um,
Yeah, the no-till is definitely of interest as a lot of farmers are transitioning or trying to reduce tillage and lean more that direction. Did you get yours set up no-till from the start?
yeah, so I did a lot of research. I was actually looking for a grant for this planter, and I actually got the acre grant through MDAR for for this planter. I've always been interested in no-till, so I was really looking for something to start that off with. So I did a lot of research. I was still pretty new at it, but I knew I wanted this planter specifically for other reasons we can get into. But knowing the capacity and talking with Market Farm Implements is actually where I purchased this. Um, Working with Dave was a great guy, and we really talked about what I was looking to do with the planter. And he took that and he ran with it and designed a custom build for myself for my farm. So that was neat.
What made you decide that you really wanted this planter?
So I'm a diversified vegetable farm, and I don't have $1 million in my back pocket to buy a different piece of equipment for every crop I grow. So I was looking for an implement that I could do or plant multiple different things with. So when I saw this planter, the features of um, the features alone I can talk a while about, but I'll touch upon a few. Is the sliding toolbar to adjust spacing between rows on the planter, um, the plethora of different spacings you can do within the planter, the multitudes of crops alone you can plant with this with this planter, excuse me, just kind of blew my mind. I was looking for something that you could quickly change and adapt to, going from planting a carrot seed to planting a squash seed, um, something that would lay fertilizer effectively and efficiently. And all in all, I was looking for that precision. Things are getting more expensive year after year, so I was really looking for a machine that could plant multiple things and do it down to the you know quarter inch or something. And this planter honestly will do that, which I was really amazed at. Um, so this planter, just a quick background. This planter, I can plant a small seeded crop on bare soil, even raised bed, 4-inch raised bed, um, all the way up to a no-till or limited till squash or pumpkin or corn seed. Um, and that's the range of diversity with this thing, and that's what I really wanted to design, and I think I've pretty much gotten there, which is cool.
Yeah, we mainly want to talk about this planter, obviously, but are there other planting tools that you use on your farm?
I've got a so that's the main one. I actually just this past year purchased a 3-row Chechian Magli Unitrium transplanter. I've got a paper pot transplanter I use, and then I've got a little Jang push seeder.
Yeah.
It's kind of the start foundation of the farm.
Yeah, no, that's a good set of tools in your
Yeah, yeah.
toolbox. Did you look at other brands of vacuum seeders? I mean, there's a few out there. What made you land on MaterMacc besides from a few of the special features
Yeah,
in there?
I looked at, I think Monoson was really the other brand that I saw. Um, and it just, I didn't dive much into like John Deere or any of the other ones. I just didn't think that they'd have the capacity what I was looking for. I think Monoson was that other really close comparison, and I think that one offered a lot. Um, but in my eyes, it didn't offer the versatility the MaterMac could give me. But I think if you look at like those two units hand in hand, they could be pretty comparable in what you're looking to get out of them. But I did a lot of research with the MaterMac, and the folks I talked to. I sold myself on it, I guess. To
It's a nice machine, that's for sure. Did the grant you have cover the entire planter?
It covered up to, I believe it was 80% of the planter. Back then, I think I paid, I think it was around $14,000 for the, it was the two-row system with the attached no-till implements on them.
Mhm.
I have since added, incorporated, modified some stuff to the planter that I think raised the value of it quite a bit. So um, as I learned and as I got a little more money to be able to do more with it.
And experimented in several different conditions and everything, kind of dialing in your systems. That makes sense to
Right,
swap
right.
out some things. How long did it take to for them to build it for you once you placed the order?
Um, if I remember correctly, I think it was probably like a 4 to 6 month turnaround. Um, because a lot of this was a custom build. If I remember correctly, it took quite a few months to get there. Um, and we drove down and picked it up, so it was really neat to see the warehouse and Dave
Yeah.
and the whole show. So
They've got a lot of stuff in their warehouse.
yeah, yeah. But I'll say with that, working with Dave, like I had never touched a MaterMacc before I even ordered this thing. Just seeing it online, and honestly, it's quite difficult to really dive deep into the planters online because they're not made in the U.S. Um, and so going down there, and Dave took me step by step through this planter of every little itty bitty thing that it did, that you could adjust, how it worked. Um, and that was kind of a lifesaver because this planter has so much to it that if you don't know what you're looking at, you're going to get confused, or it's going to take you a little bit to really understand how everything works. And going from mechanical planters to a vacuum precision was totally different in one side of things, all in all. So that was uh, really nice to go down there and work with him and get everything explained to just by step. Really helped me gain the knowledge I have today. It was kind of a foundation. So
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. There are a lot of variables on a vacuum planter, especially when you start adding in no-till and down pressure things and closing wheels and openers, and there's just like there's so many knobs to turn and levers to pull. I can see where it takes a while to figure out what's going to work and does it take much adjustment based on conditions, or can have you pretty much found that the settings that you need to use for your certain crops?
you talking bare ground and no till, or just
You you tell me.
so I will say that the bare ground definitely is a lot more easier to hone down those depths and adjustments. Um, let me think. So, like your in row spacing, if you're planting sweet corn and you want 10 inches, that's pretty much spot on. You put the gears to where you need it, and it's good. So I've kept track of that. Um, the depth is where the depth is where you can kind of get finicky, especially with smaller seeded stuff. You got to pay more attention with. Um, I've actually this past season incorporated what are called farm flex wheels. They're a small, flatter wheel meant for like a small seeded planter, but designed to work on these larger units. So that took 3 or 4 settings to actually really figure out the proper depth for spinach, for instance, a smaller finicky crop. But I've over the years, the first year I had it, I really took good notes of, because you're adjusting your spacing, you're adjusting your depth, you are changing your seed plate, you are changing. I call it the seed remover, but there's this. I have no clue how it actually does its job, but there's this.
Singulator, I think that's
Yeah,
what.
yeah, yeah.
Mm.
The singulator. Thank you. Keeping track of the singulator with different size seeds with different plates. It's kind of a step by step thing every time I go to set up the planter to something new. And when you're going from something like 3 rows of spinach to like maybe 1 row of cucumbers on a raised bed, it probably takes me a good half an hour, 45 minutes to get that thing completely switched around to do what I want to do with it. But I can do it with that one planter, which, I think you got to think about your costs into the planter and then your time. Some stuff might weigh hand in hand, but I think overall if you're looking to save and not have 4 different planners to do different things and have 50,000 invested in planners instead of just maybe 15, it's a good option. So
Well, especially as you're scaling from a couple of rows of a crop to acres of a crop.
right, correct. Yep. So, you know, the other half of this planter is like it was designed to be a no-till planter, and the cool thing about it is that even though it has all these no-till features on it, like this has a whole expanded toolbar on it, to one add weight, to two to add the coulters needed for the no-till, um, which is really cool. Is like you can use this just as well in bare ground soil as you can in a no-till system without having to rip the thing to pieces. It's minute adjustments. The biggest thing is I've got a couple Martin floating row cleaners, if you've ever heard of those, or Yetter floating row cleaners, that mount to the front of the planter for the no-till system. Um, those are they're heavy to deal with. I'll say that. So those come on and off depending on the crops we're planting. Small seeded crops specifically, those are going to come off. The fertilizer coulters easily come in and out, but again, they're heavy to deal with. But I can switch in between a single row, double row, take them out completely, whatever I want there. Um, but transitioning from the no-till or like from bare ground to transitioning to the no-till, that takes a little time set up, and that takes definitely some time to figure out how it's going to work in the field condition you're dealing with. Um, and so that's like I guess, the front of your planter, if you will. The planting unit itself works the same. Um, your furrow opener for your seed placement, where your fertilizer drops, that's all the same, bare ground, or no till, which is nice. Um, where things change up again is dealing with your row closer or your seed closer. Um, in bare ground, I'm sure a lot of people are used to like the regular circular V closing wheel, for your bare ground soil, which is what my planter originally came with. And then Market Farm Implement actually incorporated this more sturdier, um, angled circular V wheel, rubber V wheel, that was meant more for no till that they called at that point. I had this past year done more research and actually incorporated a Yetter poly twister closing wheel is what it's called. And what this is, it's a notched, it's a hard plastic notched wheel. And what this does is it kind of acts like, I'd say, a finger weeder almost. And what it does is it actually presses into the soil and indents the soil after the seed is placed. So it's not just pushing soil over the top of the seed; it's actually pushing the soil and indenting into the soil, so you have a better seed to soil contact. Because when you're working with no till, your seed to soil contact is much more difficult to achieve versus bare ground, obviously. Um, so those were the two main adjustments I made this past year, with the planter. Um, and there's still a lot more adjusting to come with it. It's really condition based and residue based in your field and how you're managing that. Uh, but it'll plant through it'll plant through 3 feet of standing rye. Uh, Sweet corn primarily does the best, or field corn does the best. But it'll plant through 3 feet of standing rye, and you'll get a crop to emerge out of it pretty well. So um, that's the amazing part of it. And the first time I went through with the planter and I saw it pop out of the ground was just jaw dropping and mind blowing, for someone that hasn't really seen or dealt with no till ever. So, uh, yeah, it was cool.
3 feet awry. That is a lot of biomass. Was that crimped down at all, or you just it was still standing?
That was killed with Gramoxone or Roundup,
Oh,
um,
okay.
and then let die for around a week or 2 weeks, and then planted into. I've also planted into 1 or 2 foot standing rye that hasn't been killed, and then killed it afterwards. Um, I make this sound very easy, but there is difficulties to this, and that's what I want to explain. Is that your conditions of when you're terminating cover crops and when you're working with those residues is really, really important, and really, I think more crop specific as well, um,
Yeah.
with the planter. So,
Yeah, no-till in corn, we'll say corn generally speaking, I think is becoming more and more, we'll call it mainstream across the board. But I think no-till in a smaller scale sweet corn type of setup is still relatively new, especially to us farmers in the Northeast. So it's always super interesting to hear people's experiences with it. And those that get it dialed in say it's phenomenal.
mhm.
Um, but yeah, like you said, figuring out the right conditions in order to work with the system, it seems to be a common thread that's tricky.
Yeah, and I can't say there's any right answer of how to do it correctly. I think it's just working with your soil conditions and the equipment you have, and figuring it out on your own. That's what I've done, um, and I'm not there yet. You know, but year after year, learn something new, adjust something differently, and trial it throughout the season is really the best way to go about it. But you're cutting down on so many different passes through the field, expenses with fuel, um, expenses with fertilizers, if you will, wear and tear on equipment. Um, so I think it's a unique thing to do, and definitely for the valley here, the Northeast.
Soil does have a big impact. What type of soil do you have?
We have a silty loam here. We actually have some of the best soil in the country, the world, down here in the Pioneer Valley, which is really awesome. We don't have a single rock ever anywhere. I don't even know what rocks look like in fields. I don't want to. So honestly, that helps a lot with this system because you're not dealing with extra, I guess, trash, if you will in the field. Um, and our equipment gets a lot less abrasion year after year. Um, so it's I guess it's nice to do nice to deal with. We're lucky. Um,
Yeah, yeah, that's nice. We grow 6 acres of sweet corn, and we're near a river, so we've got like just gravel beds all all
yeah.
swirling through it. It's a little more challenging than than a loam like that. But
Mm.
have you ever had a major failure or letdown not from this planter?
Yeah, definitely. I guess I can touch upon two things quickly. Last year, I mentioned the spinach, and I incorporated some new parts onto the planter, um, and I was really coupled with weather, but I was really having a difficult time finding good seed depths and getting seed to cover with these new Farm Flex wheels I was dealing with. Um, and so that was challenging. I had 2 or 3 settings in the ground, which really had very poor germination. And actually, on the last one, I nailed it. I figured out exactly how that worked with certain conditions, why, how. Um, you know, to me, seeding anything, direct seeding anything, I always get a little bit of a anxiety attack. Just is it going to come out? What you expected it to be, and um, the simple answer is half the time yes, half the time no. Um, so that was probably one of the big failures I've had. Overall with the planter. Um, on the bare ground side of things. All in all, this planter with your regular standard V closing wheel, it does a phenomenal job. You can nail down the depth, you can nail down the spacing. Mechanically wise, I've never really had any issues with with anything moving, working properly. Granted, it's only 4 years old, but I maintain it well, because it's an expensive piece of machinery. So I want this thing to last quite a while.
It's a
Um,
key tool that you can't you can't have it let you down.
yeah, and on the other side of things, I've definitely dealt with some issues with no-till. Again, last year I was managing a crop residue of rye to plant pumpkins and winter squash into, and the rye got too big for the planter to really want to chop through. Um, so we dealt with some binding up issues. We dealt with poor seed to soil contacts in certain areas, um, and I think it's having those experiences and learning and remembering ahead of time, okay, this crop needs to be terminated maybe a couple weeks earlier, or maybe we need to go in with a zone tiller or something, and then going in with the no-till equipment, um, to do what you need to obtain. And that's what I'm learning, is that strict no-till with anything besides sweet corn, you're gonna run into challenges, just because the behavior of the seed, the behavior of the crop. Corn, as everyone knows, is just kind of bulletproof. You can probably throw it on the top of the soil and and it'll grow. But so yeah, there's definitely been some struggles, and it's really, just like anything in farming, I think you got to do it to know how it's going to work for you, with what you have. So.
That's great to hear that insight because it's tricky. And the anxiety you mentioned before direct seeding is so true. It's like, oh, this here goes this gamble.
Glad I'm not the only one.
Yeah, that's nerve wracking, and like you said, so rewarding when you see it pop up
Mhm.
after the rain finally comes.
Yeah, yeah. Hopefully not too much this year.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, just enough. Did you have a vacuum planner on your farm at all before this one?
I did not. I had an old antique two-row John Deere mechanical transplanter, that was just primarily for sweet corn. So this was like I wanted to take that leap. I was ready to invest in something to work here, and that's where I did my research on the vacuum, and just knowing how well the precision works, and the benefits of it really. Um, I knew the cost was going to be there, but I knew the benefit was going to be there as well. So
What experiments are you gonna try this year to make it better?
yeah, so I didn't mention it before, but this was my first year with a three-row unit. So I've got three. Um, they're 82 series, MS 82 series, so they have the sliding toolbar feature on them. Um, so this was the last year was my first year of really diving into three rows, and you know what's one row versus three rows if they're all the same. Well, to me it matters. There's definitely differences, but um, definitely honing in on small seeded crops is what I'm gonna kind of work on. The planter's not it's not specifically a small seeded planter, but you're definitely capable to do small seeds with it. So my goal is to kind of work more with, especially spinach, maybe some other greens. I kind of want to try some different brassicas direct seeded with the seeder. So that's definitely something I'm gonna try to do some experimenting on, and kind of hone some better skills with that. Um, and then on the other side is working more with that no-till or limited till system. I think we're going to experiment with some uh, zone tilling, maybe prior to planting certain things like uh, squashes, for instance, pumpkins, to maybe run through quickly with a zone tiller to break up that seed furrow area, and then run through no-till uh, with the planter and be able to plant into more of a maybe broken up seed bed instead of just crashing through residue. Unfortunately, with those crops, you don't get multiple chances throughout the season. It's kind of like a one and done deal. So, like, really keeping track, keeping notes, and then remembering your mess ups and doing it right the next time.
Yeah, that's so true. I mean, yeah, pumpkins, squash, you get one shot per year at
Mhm.
trialing something.
And I'll say I've done multiple workshops and conferences and research on this, and I think it's like if you're interested in the no-till limited till thing, do your research first. You know, look at the different machines or implements out there to utilize it, and don't just go buy something because it looks cool. It's like really look into it and figure out what's going to work. Um, talk to people, talk to other farmers that are doing it, because you're investing in something huge. It's not just a couple $100 in the pocket. It's thousands. So
You've put a lot of upgrades on this unit since you purchased it. I mean, you added a whole nother row unit. You've swapped out your closing wheels. Is there any other equipment changes that you think you want to make, or that you think MaterMacc should redesign?
on the planter itself,
Yeah.
um, hmm, trying to think. You know, all in all, it's a very flowable, nice machine. I've noticed, I probably do a little more with it than's asked in like I guess the scale of diversity with it. So changing out those farm flex wheels I was talking back to like the regular V-shaped wheels takes some time. The system that's created for the I'd like to see if MaterMacc would come out with an actual like no-till version of that planter. I don't know if there is one currently, because I know mine's custom. But maybe having a more sleek system to be able to deal with those implements on that planter specifically, that takes the most time. It's really well built. The parts on it weigh a decent amount, so when you're switching things out, you definitely kind of need an extra hand to do things. Some stuff's difficult to do by yourself. Market Farm, and I won't exploit them too much, but they've come up with some really unique tools to be able to lift units up and down, slide units back and forth, which makes that really awesome. The only thing I see is like that I find the biggest issue with is probably the fertilizer on the machine. Um, I don't. It's a stainless steel hopper with a I guess, kind of geared system that rotates the fertilizer and puts it down, poly shoots down into the coulter furrow area. That's very meticulous. I guess more on my end when I'm switching hoses or going from 2 row to single row or 3 row. Um, you really got to you got to know what you're looking at, make sure things are working properly. It's all gravity fed. And so dealing with that gravity fed and granular fertilizer, I should have said. Um, I run into issues where the fertilizer isn't coming down as much as it should. Your rates per acre might not be spot on if the shoots aren't properly throwing the fertilizer down. So it's really keeping up and making sure things are working as they should, checking things after a couple passes, making sure there's fertilizer, making sure things aren't clogged. Um, but that's probably the most difficult portions of the planter, I'd say, as a whole to deal with. Again, that's more of an add-on, I think, from the general planter, but on my aspect, that's can raise difficulties. I mean, honestly, and not to boast for myself, but like I would reference my YouTube video that I made a couple years ago because it really, I am sure yours has too, but I really went step by step on in this planter of what each little bit of this planter does because I mean, through voice right now, like I can't even explain, all the different features of this thing without actually, showing it in person. So it's really, I think it's unique, and especially to the diversity of what the capabilities of the MaterMac is. So
Well, is there anything else about this planner that you wanted to share that I didn't bring up?
I would just all in all say the Italians have built a very nice machine. Well built, easy to use, easy to learn, amazing adjustments, and even though you're working with European standards of millimeters and such is working with Market Farm. They've done a great job of transitioning everything over to American. Um, so everything's in inches, things are in pounds. That's a little difficult because they don't intertwine perfectly, but you can get close enough to what you're looking at. But um, it's amazing the different things you can do with this. It's like we didn't talk much about seed plates, but you can plant anything from probably 5 feet in row down to, I don't know, a quarter inch in row, depending. So it's like just the multitude of different things you can do with it is like, that's, I can't say enough about that. So, and the ease to just work with it day in and day out is nice. It's not that frustrating once you learn how it works. And after 4 years, like I said, like very, very minimal issues with the general usage of it as a whole. It does the job. You're paying for a quality product, and you're getting what you pay for.
Well, thanks for sharing your expertise and in your review on this piece of equipment. If others want to find and follow you, how can they do that?
We have a website, bardwellfarm.com. You can find us on our YouTube page, also Bardwell Farm, which has that video on it. But we're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, and we're on Twitter primarily, posting what Bardwell Farm is and what we do every day.
Awesome. Well, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If I can ask you or direct you to do one thing, that is to go to the website for this podcast, agengpodcast.com. That's agengpodcast.com. There you'll find the show notes. You'll find links to the farmer who we chatted with today, as well as photos or videos from the call when I visited the farm. If you've got some feedback to share, my contact information's on there, or you can leave me a voicemail, and you can do that right from the link in the description in the mobile app you're listening to this to. So go ahead and do that. Thanks again for listening, and I hope you have a great day.